Okay, going back to Bob Chapman. Bob, thank you for holding during that. I'm going to give you the floor now on the economy, the police state, all the big developments. But putting end caps on that, Bob Chapman, what's your take on what you just heard?
I want every American out there who heard this program to start doing the same thing in their communities with these people who are in law enforcement who are breaking the law. And that includes judges and politicians, all of whom feed from the same sewer. And it's been going on for a long time. It's a minority, usually, of people within law enforcement. Most people in law enforcement try to do the right thing. But, you know, they have the code. You got to protect each other.
Well, Whitehurst said it 2 days ago, former head of the FBI crime lab. He said they're good at the bottom, but the sewage is at the top.
Well, it's the same thing in any organization. And, you know, to have people in law enforcement involved in narcotics, which affect generally, mostly children, is dreadful. And, you know, we see these things going on all over the country. And, I think what happens to a lot of these men, especially those who are in higher positions that had been in law enforcement for a number of years, they just get hardened to everything, and they are dealing with criminals for years, and they adapt some of the same approach to life as criminals do because they're so exposed to them. And I'm not trying to make excuses for them, but it happens. It's just like when someone's kidnapped, they find a relationship with the kidnapper so that they can handle it.
The Stockholm Syndrome.
That's right. And, you know, one of the things I want to mention here is a comment of the OSS during the 1930s being involved with narcotics. And they were taught how to do that by MI6, who had been involved for many, many, many years in narcotics, going back into the Middle Ages.
Yeah, back to the private crown-chartered British East India Company. That was the first private intelligence operatives in Europe.
And then they branched out when they took India, and then they had the giant heroin trade going into China, which they had taken possession of. And most of those shippers who were doing the shipping for them were families from New England and New York who were in the shipping business. And many of the great fortunes that exist on the East Coast today came from running heroin from India to China for the British. And that's well documented. I think people should understand as well that the Central Intelligence Agency, people within that agency are deeply involved in this thing. Books have been written for the last 25 or 30 years about the subject. And there are many, many people who are highly placed in government and close to government who have never been apprehended for what they've done, who have been deeply involved in this. And I'm not going to go in detail on it, but you see what's going on the Mexican border. This is a fight which involves the U.S. government via the CIA and the Mexican government to take over the drug trade. This is what it's all about. And the drug trade saying, we're not going to let you do that because you're just as big criminals as we are, so if you want it, you're going to have to fight for it. And that's what that's all about, and I thought I'd let people know that, because our government in the United States is unbelievably corrupt, far worse than anything you could imagine in any country for many, many years.
Bob, shifting gears into the economy, you're our expert on that. What concerns you most with what's happening in the economy right now?
Well, I think that the sovereign debt problem, there's 19 countries that are bankrupt, and that includes the United States and Great Britain. And I think they're going to have to wind this thing down. They are using the injection of money and credit into the economy, not only here, but the G20 countries as well. These are the big countries. And they have used stimulus in each country. The stimulus is running out. this month will be the last month. The money and credit has been withdrawn to some extent. If they do not continue, the Treasury, the Federal Reserve, these central banks in these major countries, if they don't continue to inject money in the system one way or another, the system's going to collapse. And I've said from the very beginning, this didn't happen because it was incompetence or greed. This was planned this way. And so we don't know when they're going to pull the plug and create deflationary depression. But it's coming, and it could come very quickly. I'm looking at about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And they're going to have to pull the plug because they can't control it anymore. And they're past the point of no return. They cannot go back. And believe me, they're terrified. And we have proof positive of that, of the way that they've gone after people like yourself, and of course me for many years. And they're going to go after other people. And anybody that exposes the crimes that they're involved in, whether it's narcotics or pedophilia or white slavery, all of these things which they're involved in, anybody is going to get a lot of heat.
Bob, let's break this down, though.
When the heat is created, Alex, it shows you that we're being very effective.
But as the IMF and World Bank documents from 2002 state, as other reports from inside the system admit, they created the derivatives bubble. They intended to implode the economy, but now you're saying they're scared. I mean, has it gotten out of hand for them? I mean, if they set all this up, and we know they did, then why are you saying they're panicking and scared?
Because they are. I don't think they want to go through with it, but they have to. And so they're trying to devise when they can do it with the least amount of heat. Now, you've seen Greece. Greece is bankrupt, has been for 10 years or more. And so they brought it up deliberately to see what the reaction was. And what they intend to do is to take all the countries that are bankrupt, and there'll be 19 of them, I can assure you. They're going to bring them all down together. And that's why I've said in the program before, they're going to have a meeting just like the meetings that were held in the 1970s called Smithsonian and the Plaza Accord and the Louvre Accord. They all get together, they devalue all the currencies, and they default on the debt, and they have a deflationary depression and a war at the same time. And that's what they're up to, and that's where they're headed. And we're exposing it, and they don't like it, and that's why we're getting heat. And believe me, if they knew where I was, I wouldn't be around.
That's right. You had to leave the United States, a decade ago?
No, it was 7 years ago, the last time. But that's not the first time. It started in the 1960s.
Yeah, for those that don't know, Bob has been there from the very beginning of the True Patriot movement against tyranny. I want to talk with him about militias. We support the militias. We're all in the militia as men, 18 to 45. But we want to explain how they're setting militias up. Some of the Fed-run militias then get mad and say, I'm criticizing militias. No, we're warning militias. We'll be right back. Bob Chapman is our guest, theinternationalforecaster.com. I'm Alex Jones with Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.tv. We've got the two new trailers we premiered last hour for Police State 4, The Rise of FEMA, and a sneak peek, and the Invisible Empire trailer, the best yet, up at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com right now throughout the weekend. If you're listening to rebroadcast, be sure and check it out as we expose these criminals and destroy their credibility, which is key to getting our country back. As our founding fathers did for more than a decade before we took the nation back. It was an info war. Bob Chapman, speaking of info war, militias are incredibly infiltrated. We support the militia. It's constitutional. But I've noticed that Fed-run militias always attack me when I warn other militias they're being set up. I warned Hatari in August of last year and got attacked for it, saying they're getting ready to set you up. Out of 400 militias that are public, I called it right because I could see what was happening. Explain to people going into this month of April your take on how they're going to try to provocateur, or if you agree with me.
Agree with you, and they've used this for years. I mean, you can go back into the 1960s with the Minutemen. I mean, how many people have even heard of the Minutemen? It was a very large, strong organization throughout the United States, sort of a more militant type of pro-American patriot movement than the John Birch Society was, which is more into education. And they infiltrated like mad. And it happened at every level. And so you had to be very careful what you said and what you did. And they're still doing it today. I mean, I had people from the federal government try to plant grenades in my garage. Now, fortunately, I caught them. And I told them if they came back, I'd kill them. And fortunately, they didn't come back. And